I've been married to Patricia for 27 years. Long enough to know the difference between a real problem and a passing mood. We lived in a quiet Ohio community, raised 2 children who now had families of their own, and spent most weekends babysitting grandchildren or fixing things around the house. I worked as a factory supervisor. Patricia had spent years as a teacher before retiring. Our life wasn't exciting, but at our age, peace has its own value. The trouble started with a package. One Thursday afternoon, I came home early after a maintenance shutdown at work. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Patricia carrying a medium-sized cardboard box toward the garage. Nothing unusual there. People order things online every day. But when she saw my truck, she froze. Just for a second. Then she quickly pushed the box behind an old workbench and shut the garage door before I even stepped out. That wasn't like her. Patricia was many things. Organized. Responsible. Sometimes stubborn enough to argue with a stop sign. But secretive? Never. At dinner I asked casually. "What's in the box?" She nearly dropped her fork. "What box?" Now that's the kind of answer that gets a husband's attention. "The one you hid in the garage." "Oh. That. Wrong delivery. Neighbor's package." Simple enough. Except the next morning the package was still there. And the morning after that. 3 days passed. Then 4. If it belonged to a neighbor, why was it still sitting behind my workbench? I didn't touch it. Some men react first and think later. I've lived long enough to know that patience usually reveals more than confrontation. Instead, I watched. Patricia visited the garage several times each day. She checked the box. Moved it. Covered it with an old blanket. One evening our daughter Claire stopped by with her husband, Gavin, and their 2 kids. During dinner I noticed Patricia glance nervously toward the garage every time someone mentioned deliveries or shopping. The behavior was becoming impossible to ignore. "Men, what would you have done?" Because by then my mind had already started connecting dots that might not even exist. Financial problems? A secret purchase? Something she didn't want me to know. After nearly 3 decades together, trust doesn't disappear overnight. But small cracks can appear faster than you'd think. The following Tuesday, after Patricia left to meet her friend Beverly for coffee, I walked into the garage intending to finally look at the shipping label. What I found wasn't a neighbor's package at all. And the name printed on that label changed everything. I thought I was dealing with a simple secret. I was wrong. The label didn't belong to a neighbor. It belonged to Patricia. Not surprising, right? What stopped me cold was the return address. The package had come from a financial services company in Arizona. Not a store. Not an online retailer. A financial firm. Now my attention sharpened. For most of our marriage, Patricia handled everyday household expenses while I managed our long-term savings and retirement accounts. We weren't wealthy, but we had worked hard, stayed out of debt, and built a comfortable future. At least, that's what I believed. I didn't open the box. I wasn't interested in acting like a detective in some television drama. But I did write down the company name. That evening I brought it up. Calmly. "Patricia, why is a financial company sending you packages?" The color drained from her face. Then came the answer. Too fast. Too rehearsed. "Oh, that's nothing. Retirement information." Nothing. One of the most dangerous words in a marriage. Because when something truly is nothing, people don't hide it behind workbenches and blankets. I nodded and changed the subject. But inside, I was paying attention. Over the next week, little things started bothering me. Patricia became protective of her phone. She left conversations unfinished when I entered the room. Twice I found her reviewing papers at the kitchen table, only for her to gather everything the moment I walked in. The strange part wasn't the secrecy itself. It was the fear. She didn't seem excited. She seemed worried. There's a difference. One Saturday afternoon, our son Nathan came over with his wife, Brooke, and their little boy. While everyone sat on the patio, Patricia slipped inside. 10 minutes later I followed. She was standing in the laundry room holding several envelopes. When she saw me, she folded them so quickly she nearly tore one. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not anger. Resolve. I loved my wife too much to spend months guessing. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat in my recliner and started reviewing our financial records. Nothing dramatic. Just facts. Bank statements. Retirement accounts. Tax records. The kind of boring paperwork most people avoid. 3 hours later, I found something. A separate account. Not huge. But significant. An account I had never seen before. Opened almost 2 years earlier. And Patricia's name was the only one listed on it. I stared at the screen for a long time. 27 years of marriage. 2 children. 3 grandchildren. And now a secret financial account. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe there wasn't. Either way, I was done guessing. The next morning I decided to reconstruct every major financial decision we'd made during the past 2 years. I thought I was finally getting close to the truth. Then I discovered where some of the money had been going. And suddenly the secret account became the least troubling part of the story. I still didn't know why Patricia was hiding it. But I knew one thing: someone else was involved. I wish I could tell you I found some dramatic affair or a secret second life. That would have been easier. The money trail led somewhere far more confusing. Over 2 years, small amounts had been transferred from Patricia's private account on a regular basis. Nothing large enough to trigger alarms. A few $100s here. A few hundred there. The recipient's name appeared over and over. Monica Harper. I had no idea who Monica Harper was. Not a relative. Not a friend. Not a former coworker. At least not that I knew. Before confronting Patricia, I decided to do what I've always done when facing a problem at work. Gather facts first. Talk second. Over the next several days, I quietly reconstructed the timeline. The account had been opened shortly after Patricia's retirement from teaching. The transfers began a few months later. The mysterious package from Arizona had arrived only recently. Those weren't random events. They were connected. One afternoon I called an old mutual friend named Cheryl. She had taught with Patricia for years and still kept in touch with many retired teachers. I kept my questions general. Do you know anyone named Monica Harper? The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. Then Cheryl answered carefully. Why are you asking? That response immediately got my attention. Most people simply say yes or no. I repeated the question. Cheryl sighed. I think that's something Patricia should explain. Now I knew 2 things. First, Monica was real. Second, people around me knew something I didn't. That evening I barely touched dinner. Patricia noticed. After 27 years, she could read me almost as well as I could read her. You seem distracted, she said. Just thinking. That wasn't entirely a lie. I was thinking about trust. About secrets. About how marriages rarely collapse from one giant event. More often it's 1,000 small decisions made in silence. Patricia looked like she wanted to say something. Instead, she looked away. Fear. I kept seeing it. Not guilt. Not excitement. Fear. The next morning I drove to visit my older sister, Denise. She's the kind of person who notices details everyone else misses. After listening to the entire situation, she leaned back and crossed her arms. "You're assuming she's hiding something from you." "She is hiding something." "Maybe," Denise said. "But are you sure she's hiding something from you and not for someone?" That sentence stayed with me the entire drive home. For the first time, I considered another possibility. What if Patricia wasn't protecting herself? What if she was protecting someone else? That evening I returned home determined to stop investigating and start asking direct questions. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw something that changed my plans. A woman I'd never seen before was standing on my front porch. Patricia was speaking with her. Both looked nervous. And when the stranger turned toward me, I realized she had been crying. The moment Patricia saw my truck, her face went completely pale. I finally knew the secret had reached our front door. What I didn't know was why that stranger seemed terrified to meet my eyes. I parked the truck and walked toward the porch. The stranger looked like she wanted to disappear. Patricia looked even worse. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Patricia took a slow breath. "James, we need to talk." That's never a sentence a husband enjoys hearing. I stepped onto the porch and looked directly at the woman. She appeared to be in her early 40s. Tired eyes. Nervous hands. The kind of expression people wear when they've been carrying a burden for too long. "I'm Monica," she said quietly. So there it was. The name from the bank records. The woman receiving the money. The person everyone seemed reluctant to discuss. I invited both women inside. No accusations. No raised voices. Just answers. We sat around the kitchen table where our family had shared thousands of meals over nearly 3 decades. For several minutes, Monica struggled to speak. Patricia finally reached over and squeezed her hand. That small gesture told me more than any explanation could. Whatever this was, Patricia cared deeply about this woman. Monica looked at me. Then she said something I never expected. "Your wife saved my life." I didn't respond. I simply waited. People reveal more when they aren't interrupted. Monica explained that several years earlier she had been diagnosed with a serious medical condition. Treatment wasn't impossible, but it was expensive. After a divorce and a series of financial setbacks, she had exhausted most of her savings. Patricia had met her through a retired teacher's volunteer program. What started as occasional help turned into a friendship. Then into something larger. For 2 years, Patricia had been quietly helping her. The transfers. The secret account. The package. Everything connected to financial planning and medical paperwork. The room fell silent. Part of me felt relieved. There was no affair. No secret romance. No hidden second family. But relief quickly gave way to another emotion. Disappointment. Because none of that explained why my wife had hidden it from me. I turned toward Patricia. "Why?" Just one word. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Not dramatic tears. The kind that come from carrying guilt too long. "I wanted to tell you." "Then why didn't you?" She stared down at the table. And finally the truth started emerging. Not all of it. But enough. She admitted she had been afraid of my reaction. Afraid I would think she was giving away too much money. Afraid I would stop helping. Afraid I would say no. The more she talked, the more I realized something important. This wasn't really about money. It was about fear. Fear that had grown quietly for 2 years. Fear that had convinced a good woman to keep secrets from her husband. Then Patricia said something that stopped the room cold. "There was another reason I couldn't tell you." I looked directly into her eyes. For the first time all evening, she didn't look away. And what she revealed next explained every strange decision she had made since opening that account. I thought I finally understood the situation. I was wrong. Patricia held my gaze for several seconds before speaking. I wasn't afraid you'd refuse to help Monica. Her voice trembled. I was afraid of what helping her reminded me about us. Now I was confused again. Monica quietly excused herself and stepped into the living room, giving us privacy. Patricia folded her hands on the table. You remember when I retired? I nodded. Of course I remembered. For years she had looked forward to it. Then retirement arrived, and something changed. She smiled less. Talked less. Spent more time alone. At the time I assumed she was adjusting to a new phase of life. I was wrong. I felt lost, she said. For 40 years I knew exactly who I was. Then one day I wasn't a teacher anymore. The pieces started falling into place. The secret account. The volunteer work. The friendship with Monica. The fear. Patricia wasn't hiding another man. She wasn't hiding a financial scheme. She was hiding a crisis of identity. Helping Monica gave her purpose when she felt invisible. But instead of telling me how deeply she was struggling, she carried it alone. Then came the part that hurt. I was ashamed, James. You seemed strong and certain about retirement. I felt weak. I didn't want you to see that. I leaned back in my chair. 27 years together. And both of us had made the same mistake. We had been protecting each other from conversations we desperately needed to have. I told her the truth. I wasn't certain. She looked up. I worried about retirement too. I worried about aging. I worried about becoming irrelevant. I just didn't talk about it. For the first time that night, a small smile appeared. Not because everything was fixed. Because we were finally being honest. The next 2 hours became one of the most important conversations of our marriage. No speeches. No drama. Just truth. We talked about fears. About getting older. About purpose. About grandchildren. About the years we still hope to have together. Then we addressed the practical issue. The money. Not as opponents. As partners. The following week we created a complete financial transparency plan. Every account. Every transfer. Every major decision. No exceptions. And because helping Monica genuinely mattered to both of us, we agreed on a monthly amount we could comfortably contribute together. Together. That word made all the difference. Over the following months, something unexpected happened. Patricia stopped carrying everything by herself. I stopped assuming silence meant everything was fine. We started taking long evening walks through our neighborhood again. We talked more. Listened more. Guessed less. Monica's health gradually improved, and she became a family friend. Our children, Claire and Nathan, eventually learned the full story and were proud of their mother. Most important of all, Patricia and I learned a lesson that nearly arrived too late. Love isn't threatened only by betrayal. Sometimes it's threatened by pride. By silence. By the belief that you're protecting someone when you're really building a wall between you. I forgave Patricia because forgiveness requires strength. She earned that forgiveness by choosing complete honesty. Today our marriage is stronger than it was before that package ever appeared in my garage. Not because the crisis never happened. Because we finally faced it together. What happens when a marriage is threatened not by infidelity, but by silence? Sometimes the greatest danger isn't a secret itself, it's the fear that created it. One husband discovered that wisdom, honesty, and respect can save what pride almost destroys.